Right, we will kick off. Firstly, I just want to acknowledge quite a few community partners in the room. So we've got Jason McCarthy and Miriam Bentley from New Zealand Police, Murray Edridge from Wellington City Mission, although he's running late, Stephen Turnock from DCM, and Jeremy Smith from HOSPO New Zealand. No mai haere mai, thanks so much for coming to talk to us today. We will have hopefully more colleagues showing up really soon, but also to draw the attention. This is live stream, so people will be able to catch up. But yeah, depending on how many people, if anyone else is coming up to speak, feel free to just join us at the table. Yeah, if people want to text their mates, that would be really good. Thank you. But otherwise, take it away.
Kia ora koutou. Well, it is my pleasure to be here presenting to you, and also my pleasure to be working again in the space of city safety. And I'd like to just take a note to acknowledge some of the people behind us who form up some of the key teams who will be doing this work, but already have been doing a lot of really great work in this space. And if anything, over the last few months since I've taken up the position of SRO, it has been a real privilege to see that and the kind of the cogs of the wheel that make up everything that we do in the space, and see the value and the passion that's behind the officers who work in our city and deliver some of these initiatives, and be looking to delivering more of these initiatives as we go forward. I asked the team to circulate the presentation to councillors ahead of time, and I hope that you've had a chance just to flick through. You haven't, which is great too, because it is more of a wow factor. Because this is, David and I have been sort of talking with our partners for some time, and members of the community, we have a habit of riffing off each other and having a bit of a conversation. Riffing. It's the generator, sorry. Oh, my generator. Okay, I'm going to move on. So this workshop is about talking to you about what we've been seeing on the ground, obviously, since we kicked off with the Pōneke Promise back in 2021, which is actually when the last time I spoke to you, and looking at what we've learnt through that experience and that program, and how we are looking to harness and strengthen some of the systems that we have in place, and work with our partners to do something different. This is about testing ideas, showing you the initiatives that we've researched, and having a conversation about, oh, here's Jeremy, welcome, please join us at the table. And also with our partners, showing the way that we want to work together for the future. So, well, David's on the clicker. Every good plan has a great vision and a purpose, and this is essentially really reminding us and focusing on what we want to achieve through this plan. This is around also putting together an integrated and enduring plan for the council and for the city and our partners to make improvements to city safety and to achieve a safe and inclusive Wellington, where our spaces are inviting and our communities feel safe. The problem statement that we're looking at also kind of acknowledges the fact that as a whole our city is actually safe. It's the perception of safety that we are challenged with, and that's due to people's experiences from time to time. And so we're looking at how do we address that perception issue, whilst also looking at some of the areas that we can improve on so that we can create a more vibrant, welcoming environment for everyone. As you know, public perceptions of safety in Wellington CBD have significantly declined, particularly at night, with a 12% decrease in the daytime and a 33% decrease at night since 2019. These declines have affected business confidence and the council's reputation, highlighting the importance of addressing safety concerns comprehensively. Over the past 3 years, safety perceptions have partially stabilised, demonstrating the positive impact of initiatives like the Pōneke Promise, but concerns still remain, and they underscore the necessity of a sustained long-term approach to improve safety perceptions and restore public confidence.
I think this might be a good time to remind you the decisions that you've made previously that have prompted this work. So in developing this plan, we're working to two previous council resolutions. One came through the long-term plan, which was to develop the city safety plan, and the other one came earlier, and that is around our strategic approach to homelessness. And we're approaching those together, recognising two things, right? One is that some of the key reasons why people tell us through the RMS that they feel unsafe in the central city are things like rough sleeping and homelessness, but also recognising that when we walk past people who are rough sleeping or who are homeless, sometimes we think we feel unsafe, and we want to challenge that a little bit, to recognise that we might not feel unsafe, but it can make people feel uncomfortable. And where there is a genuine safety issue in that type of environment is that the person who is rough sleeping or who is homeless is in a situation that is much more unsafe than the person who is walking past them in the street. So we really think that we need to have an integrated response to both of those issues, and we're proposing to present a single plan that responds to each of those. And you'll see that in more detail as we go through the presentation.
So we wanted to really call out the things that we can and can't control. And obviously, as I said before, we have some key safety systems that we do control, like our CCTV network that's integrated with the police and the emergency services currently. And they play a really critical role in monitoring and enhancing public safety. There's also, we provide funding to external organisations and our partner organisations, which extend our reach into the community to address some of these challenges. If we go on to the next slide, what we can't control is some of those systemic issues and the root causes of homelessness, inequality and mental health provision. As a council, we can't directly control some of these root causes in retail crime, antisocial behaviour, but we can be more effective through strategically targeting our funding and support services that prevent and respond and advocate for those in need of housing, for example. And this approach will ensure that individuals have access to the support services before enforcement measures are taken. So it's around how do we create, again, a more targeted approach and a smarter way of working. And that is through working smarter together and integrating our systems and services and partnerships. So this strategy essentially, the pillars that we're proposing and interventions are informed by the previous work and insights that we've gained through that work to ensure a robust and evidence-based approach to addressing our challenges. So these are the 5 pillars that will underpin and hold up our overall city safety plan that now just as a slight pause, as I said, this workshop is about letting you know the approach that we're taking and the direction that we're taking and testing that with you. We do want to get your feedback so that we can help shape this up so that that we can sort of, and again, creating that space where we can test ideas, make changes, possibly fail in some areas, but amend and learn what we need to learn so that we can make changes as we go for the future. Sorry, now I'm rambling. God. All right. So pillar 1 is looking at our city safety systems and enhancing them and strengthening them. And it's about deploying targeted interventions in the right places to address the specific factors that contribute to a negative perception and experiences of safety. So some of the actions that we're looking at rolling out and testing. Well, one of the main things, as I've spoken to you about before, is our CCTV network. And can I just see who of you have already visited our CCTV camera base and is familiar with it? It's super cool, and I'd love to take you down just to get the experience, because what you'll find is a room that's equipped with huge screens and the ability to see different spots of the city at all times. We have fantastic operators who've got great relationships with police and the beat team, and through that we're able to monitor the activity on the street. What we do need to do, though, is internally make sure that that system and the network is strong enough to take on capability and storage. It doesn't fail. And that it's fit for purpose for the future, and that it's the right design when it comes to city safety. So that's a key part of this plan. We already have really great relationships with our community patrols, so that's our Pacifica patrols, our ethnic patrols, and of course our Māori wardens. But we know that we need to lift up and standardise our approach across these patrols so that we can be more effective with the rostering, with the coverage, and the way that we communicate with them and support them. So we'll be looking to invest more in equipping them with better technology, with the radios, and a way or a mechanism of getting real-time data back to us so that we can analyse what's working, what's not working, and where we might need to play a different role in those areas. Something that we've done a bit of research in is looking at what we're calling safety spots. So you may have seen them on some university campuses potentially, and there's definitely one at the train station. But essentially it's like a live intercom. You press a button and you talk to an operator who could help you if you're feeling unsafe. And we're looking at trialling these spots outside of what's currently Te Pokapū Hapori on Manners Street, down the bottom of Courtney Place near the slip lane, and then Upper Cuba Street outside the Night and Day. A place that will be well lit, very visible and signposted, and will have a camera and an operator available 24/7 if you feel unsafe in any of those times, to be able to then call on the beat team or anybody who's available through this new coordinated way of working. And then we're looking at, and 1.4 speaks to enhancing our capability on the frontline services that we do have in council. So officers that walk the streets in a proactive way to work with businesses, work with our community, and establish almost safety plans for the everyday challenges that they might take on the street. So this is something that we'll be working really closely with the police on and the police beat team, and working alongside them to mitigate any risks that might be coming up that day or that week, and making a plan that's bespoke for a business, a hospitality, or a community. Do you want to expand on that at all?
I think what we're intending to do with this group is enhance the service that has traditionally been provided by Hāpai safety officers, and to lift and strengthen the great work that they've done for many years, and to take a much more proactive approach, and to be much more hands-on in addressing safety concerns either with an individual or a particular area, and bring together key stakeholders to develop a plan to respond to whatever that concern might be.
1.5 is just recognising the fact that the community does often come up with really great ideas that we need to listen to and get curious about and support. So it's, and this is around essentially supporting initiatives or projects that come up through the grants funding that was allocated to city safety, and looking at what we can get behind to test out in the community. Pillar 2 is looking at how we can strengthen our community's response to homelessness. We've done a lot of work in this space for a number of years, and we have a lot of knowledge and have done a lot of research into the drivers of homelessness and the kinds of interventions that work or don't work. We want to build off, and if you just quickly go to the next slide, sorry. We want to build off the actions that are currently underway, have been completed through the Housing Action Plan, and inform specific actions and interventions for the City Safety Plan. And that is, and if you go back, sorry, these are ordered in a funny way, but essentially really trying to focus on what we the people who are in the most high and complex needs that are more visible on our streets, and really working very closely with our partners, DCM, the Wellington City Mission, especially with the new opening of Whakamaru, and making sure that we can complement those services, and we can work to identify and target some services to look at what we're calling the cohort of 30 of high needs and complex people with complex challenges. Sorry, just if Murray's walked in, no, he's not. Okay, great. Did you want to expand on that?
No, I don't need to expand on that one. If we move to 2.2, that's about strengthening outreach and extending support networks to provide services outside of normal business hours. We did we did an assessment of the effectiveness of our investment into responding to homelessness 18 months ago, and one of the key areas that review identified is that outside of business hours, there's not a lot of support for people and for the street community. And since then, things have evolved. Whakamaru has opened now, and that's one piece of additional support available to people, 24/7, which is wonderful. And this action will focus on how we can further strengthen the support available to vulnerable people outside of business hours.
Just before we move on, 2.3 is pretty important as well. We realise that we need to be able to provide really good advice and information to our elected members and the Mayor when it comes to advocacy from a central government perspective. We collect a lot of information, we analyse and work with a lot of information from our community and our partners, and we want to be able to be putting that into a clearer picture of what needs to happen and what the gaps are in this space. So we'll be doing a lot of work to understand the data, collate it, consolidate it, and analyse it, and provide good advice for you as our elected members and governors. Thank you. So Pillar 3 is looking at what we can do in the night time and support people having a safe night out and making sure that we can tie in with the work that we're doing around the precinct plan, for example, and in the nighttime economy. So we'll be using the work that has already been developed and making sure that informs any actions that we take in this space, such as the Sexual Violence Prevention Action Plan, and making sure that any initiatives that we do roll out in this space are very visible. These actions are quite exciting, and I'm really more excited about the fact that we are trying to partner in a really meaningful way with Hospitality New Zealand. And 3.1 is something that we're hoping to trial in the first instance to develop a care officer. And the idea behind this is essentially helping our bar managers identify people who are vulnerable in the establishment. Normally, they might sort of be told to exit the establishment, and then we're not really sure what happens there, or we don't have a lot of control in that space. But the care officer would essentially then come on and make sure that person can either get to take 10 or to a safe way home. And we're sort of working with hospitality to develop what that approach might look like and what the service could look like. So that's pretty exciting. 3.2 speaks to something that we're already doing, but with the strengthening of some of our safety systems, we'll be doing that in a more visible way. So, for example, if there is an opening of the ballet at the St. James, and we normally know that the routes that people take to get into the city from everywhere from out of town or across the region is, if they're driving, they usually park around Tory Street or around the corner on Wakefield, and then they come and make their way through to Courtney Place and then walk down towards the St. James. What we're trying to do is to have a response team set up, so we have someone who's responsible for the cleaning contracting, our service delivery partners on the ground, police beat team and CCTV team really working together to prevent any encampments from happening, any antisocial behaviour from happening, and making sure that we can sort of clear the way for people to have a good experience going in and out of the venues.
Both 3.1 and 3.2 really speak to the council taking a much more active role in the street at night time, and we have a large number of really wonderful venue operators and hospitality businesses who manage what happens inside their venues really, really effectively. But at the moment, there's not a lot of support for people when they leave, and both of these actions speak to a role for the council in promoting and encouraging kind of safety outside of venues and outside of establishments.
3.3 is something that we're calling the Nightline at the moment, and we're looking, and we're still obviously scoping it up, but we're looking at creating a journey through the CBD that starts at the bottom of Cuba Street, and I should have memorised this track, but essentially goes up through to Dixon, is at Leeds Street, and then through and ends up in Ghuznee. And it's a partnership again with hospitality to create some ambient lighting to sort of create a route or where people can we could put some activations and people can follow essentially to have a safe journey, obviously, but also an alternative journey to Courtenay Place, and creating safety through obviously that visibility and the lighting aspect, but also allowing opportunities for street activities as part of that. 3.4 and 3.5 are really trying to enhance what we currently do in this space, looking at the gaps and seeing if we can make some improvements in this space. So expansion of the education around drug checking and where that happens and how we might need to enhance that a little bit more, support it a little bit more, as well as the sexual violence prevention training in our hospitality. And this kind of gives you a sense of how we're sort of coordinating things differently. We do a lot of work externally, we get a lot of information all the time, and we meet with different people every day in this council. This is a way of trying to streamline that information, but also create ways that we can triage issues when they come up, both internally and also coordinate a delivery of the initiatives that we've presented to you today, and making sure that we are integrated within the organisation, also with our external partners. It also is a way of creating a governance structure for this program of work with the steering group, and then obviously oversight by the Mayor's Advisory Group. And of course 4.2 is something that we want to show this collaboration essentially in the form of a safety hub, whereby we have a place in the CBD, and we're looking.
Yeah, we're looking to. We have a lease on a property in Manor Street, and we're looking to repurpose it. To repurpose it for the purpose of to establish the safety hub, which is it's not intended to be a police station. It's not somewhere people go to report crime, but it will provide a space for the community patrols and other interested groups to be able to be based from, to coordinate from, as well as a place where people who aren't reporting a crime but might have a safety concern can come and speak to somebody and access support that way. We see it as a really important action as part of this plan, and it also provides a council presence very close to Te Aro Park after we've closed. Arapaki and Te Wahiawhina is due to close shortly, so it provides a council presence in that area where there have been safety concerns previously.
Pillar 5 speaks to the regulatory framework which underpins everything that we do. So there's a lot of work going on in terms of again, as the regulator, what we can do in this space to create an environmental approach to make sure that our city is thriving, that we have that through the work that the strategy team are doing to develop the local alcohol policy, where we are connected into that and that everybody has a great engagement in that space. And also through the alcohol licensing team, we use our regulatory power as well to try to minimise preloading and sideloading, which is quite a big issue for us in the CBD. The public spaces bylaw is something that our staff are warranted with, and that is essentially something that we want to make sure is fit for purpose. For those of you that don't know, that is essentially something that allows us to remove people's belongings if they are blocking a footpath, for example, and we want to make sure that when you're warranted and when we're practicing that it is effective and it is the right thing to be doing.
As well as that it is probably the right level of response for whatever the challenge might be. We've got quite limited ability at the moment when something is going wrong or there's an issue in the street. We have the option under the Public Places Bylaw to require someone to move and to take their things if we need to. The next option is to trespass somebody, which is a really big, quite serious step to take to trespass somebody from public areas. And so what we want to do through this action is make sure that we have the right ability to respond in an appropriate way to a situation that might be occurring, and that it doesn't go further than it needs to for whatever the context of the issue might be.
Yeah. our communications approach is pretty important to this entire program, because as we said at the beginning, we have issues with the perception of safety. Communication in this space is very vital, very vital. It is vital. And so we want to make sure that we are increasing our visibility and confidence with our public, our inner city neighbourhood and residents, and the businesses in this space. We want to be able to, we want to collaborate with our strategic partners so that they are on board with these initiatives, and that they can also talk about that, the way that we're working together. And also importantly, it's about how we take responsibility for the roles that we do have and how we coordinate between those roles together. We have some measures that we want to put in place so that we can measure the impact of this plan, and certainly the initiatives that we want to test out. And again, this will inform, this is more sort of beyond, to me, this is beyond the RMS survey. This kind of will inform the initiatives on the ground and help us shape things up, or look at the gaps that we are not covering and what we need to change to make things more effective. And finally, we have a lot of work to do to get some of these things off the ground, and we hope to be stepping you through it as we go through each milestone. You'll note that in March we are hoping to come to you with a more formalised plan with more expanded details of each of these initiatives, what we've tested, what we're finding, and the way that we're working with our partners, as well as the grants committee, where we are going to be asking you to support the proposals that we have in place for some of these tactical interventions. So that comes to the end of our presentation. Really keen to have some conversations and answer your questions, and of course, obviously our partners are here as well.
Oh, kia ora, ngā mihi nui kia koe, Sahai and David. We have a few, hang on, a few different hands going up. First, Pātai from Councillor Pannett, then Councillor Winnie.
Thank you. I'll just ask 3 questions and then maybe go back on the list. Is that all right?
Yep.
Thank you for all your work. Appreciate that. And sorry, I was listening as I was coming in, walking over here. What would you say the success of the previous work was? Because we're sort of like, okay, we had some great hopes. Now we're back in again with a different plan or revised plan.
Yeah, and I'm happily to say I take great pride in talking about the Pōneke Promise, in the sense that unlike other cities in the country, we had this 3 years of building up key strategic partnerships, allowing that close collaboration and information sharing, but also being able to test what we could do in this space really quickly, but also take other forms of action. So we have the 3 years on everybody else who are now only addressing some of these challenges now.
Okay. Who's on the group? Because I did ask about people who have experience of gender violence and also violence against our rainbow communities.
You mean the Mayor's Advisory Group?
Yeah, the safety group.
Yeah, that's the
Mayor's formed.
The Mayor's Advisory Group is currently made up of DCM, the police, the Wellington City Mission, MSD, HUD, Kāinga Order, and we're just working. Te Whatu Order, sorry, is the other one, and that was a big win to have them around the table. And we're just working through mana whenua representation at the moment as well.
So, given we have where this came from is particularly young women feeling unsafe in the city, do you feel that these people have got the right expertise? And our rainbow communities, definitely, that is some quite strong feedback that we get.
I think the organisations that are part of that group are groups that can influence, that can get things done, and who have access to policy and resources and the ability to take action against the things that we're seeing. So we are reasonably comfortable with the group as officers. Obviously, it's the Mayor's group, and the Mayor has the ability to invite others if needed. Yeah,
okay. I'll go back on the list. Thank you.
Councillor Winera.
Kia ora, team. Just kind of a procedural question. The team mentioned they might be keen on some feedback, so can we offer feedback as well as ask questions?
Yes, please.
Yes, I appreciate it if it's condensed though.
Sure. I guess I just wanted to speak of the need for clear and consistent public messaging. You know, a lot of feedback that I get from my community is that there are so many different things which all kind of look different. You know, Te Pouaka Hapori, Hapaiake safety officers in bright green, you know, etc. And I think some of these ideas, you know, such as safety telephones and safety points are really fantastic. I just want to be sure that, like, instead of, you know, calling it Te Waia Manaki Wellington City Council Connected Community Safety Line, you know, we could just write safety telephone in very clear, plain council branding. Might, you know, save on the consultant spend too.
Absolutely.
Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, mine was kind of related to an earlier point you raised, and that was around the 2 action points that led to the formation of this work, and they were the city safety element, but also the homelessness element. And one of the points that I'm kind of interested in understanding further is recognising that both of those stem from perceptions of safety in this context, how we are able to communicate with the public, in particular how the actions that we undertake to resolve each of those are in fact different and address sort of different underlying needs. I guess it sort of goes to the conversation I shared around sort of the approach Auckland Council was taking, where, you know, when they were notified of someone who was on the street or sleeping rough, they were very clear with the community that they did not consider that a safety issue and they considered that a welfare issue. So sort of some of those sorts of things.
I'm just...
We're working through, it's a really good point, and I know that as we've been working through the plan, we're really clear on that. But we are working through, and it was the previous slide around the clear and consistent comms approach, and we do need to be really clear on what those key points and those key messages are, and we need to be consistently sharing them. But we haven't landed the plan yet, so we're still working through the most effective way to communicate this entire plan, including that challenge as well.
Yeah, the other one was, I know that the sort of focus, one of the focuses through Pōneke Promise was around SEPTED and involving that in some of our more urban design things. Do we see that being sort of continued through this plan, or do we kind of feel it's already embedded significantly in the organisation?
It's absolutely part of the way that we roll out our initiatives. I said this to the team the other day when I had a meeting with Urban Design, that I consider it as a given that every time that we look at a space that we might need to have a look at its design or the way that it's laid out and any changes that we need to make, SEPTED is the forefront of our thinking and analysis.
Cool, thank you.
Kia ora, welcome Murray Edridge. If you'd like, you can join us at the table. If you want to hang at the back, that's also okay. Kia ora. Councillor Young.
So I've got 2 totally different questions. First of all, with the homeless, when you remove their belongings, where do you remove them to, and how do they get them back?
When we remove belonging, it's always as a last resort, and only when we haven't been able to locate the person and to be able to support them to move their things elsewhere. On occasion, and we don't do it often, but we do need to do it sometimes, where people might have left their belongings, and when I talk about belongings, it's typically something like it could be a mattress or some blankets.
I walk past them quite often.
Yeah, and often just from a health perspective, disposing of those items is the action that we need to take, because it's not safe to store those.
Okay. So the second question, totally different, but sort of aligned. Bulcott Street. So, you know, I've talked to you about the problems of the emergency housing and the effect on the nearby church and the people who have Alcoholics Anonymous, etc., who meet there. What's happening? Anything?
Well, I guess it's a question for Kāinga Ora, because we don't control that, but we do have conversations with them and get updates in terms of essentially what the operations of that space. But do you want to?
Potentially is a bit out of scope for the kaupapa of this workshop.
I'm happy to talk to you about it.
We've worked very closely with Kāinga Ora with both Bulcott and Church Street accommodations. We've put in implemented a number of things, and there's further implementation ideas to be discussed and moved forward with. We've made quite a bit of inroad in the last couple of months, basically working with them and putting people in the right accommodations. is probably the term I'd use, not in a building with several others causing the problems, and that's not where they need to be either. So it's a win-win.
Okay, thank you. And I'll talk to you about the garden later on, if I may, Shaheen. Okay, thank you.
Councillor McNulty.
Kia ora. This looks really comprehensive, and I guess I appreciate that it doesn't just seem like you're going to try a few things, you're going to try a whole bunch of things, and you're going to be very actively monitoring, and if something stops working, you'll boot that out and move on to something else, which, you know, that's coming from a marketing background, there's a synergy there. But I guess really just what I wanted to get out of you was what's fundamentally the difference, you'd say, between this work and the Pōneke Promise, you know, in terms of the line to take to the communities? What's really the driver of what we're doing different this time?
This is an enduring and an integrated approach. The Pōneke Promise, as I said before, is something that we rolled out over 3 years with the RTP decision of 2021. This takes on from what we've learnt and the partnerships that we built, and now is trying to integrate all those lessons and the initiatives further and deepen it. We have an understanding now of the kind of systems that we have and an understanding of where the gaps are in those systems, and this is essentially of trying to strengthen that up as a whole and creating a bit of an ecosystem for safety for our city.
Councillor Randall.
Thank you. First, I'm just conscious the police are here, and I was just wondering if there's any comment that the police would make about either their side of this plan or their engagement with this plan in terms of what they're having to deal with and how it, whether it works together or not, or they've got concerns.
Yeah, sure. Firstly, we've had years of good relationships working with council Safer City teams, and so we've got their good basis there already. Bit of a side issue, we did win a police award, a joint police council submission based on partnerships and the problems we solved with Te Aro Park. So we've got that base there. We are certainly on board with the plan. I think what I like most about it is the coordination of our efforts from a governance group to a steering committee to a working group, coordinating the information, the intelligence, and having a joint effort to those problems is probably key rather than us doing it in isolation.
Thank you. I note that the Regional Council has cancelled the night bus service, and I was wondering if you could comment on whether or not that is not made a bit of a gap in terms of people trying to get home, that the fact that the buses seem to stop about, I don't know what it is, midnight now.
I worked through to 5 in the morning in Courtney Place about 3 months ago. I saw the last bus, 4 a.m. One person got on it heading to the hut, and he looked like a worker. It was certainly not a person who'd come out for the night. So I guess Greater Wellington are weighing up the feasibility of the service too. So.
Okay.
Just from the back end of hospitality perspective,
Oh, sir, if you'd like, you could speak into the microphone, so we can, people watching online can hear your comments.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Yeah, from a hospitality perspective, the late night buses are important because Uber has a tendency to start pushing rates up considerably. And I know from working with the police over the years is that people left in town with nowhere to go between whatever 3:30 a.m. or 4 a.m. And when the first buses start running at 7 a.m. is a recipe for trouble. And that's often when we do have situations where people have got nowhere to go, bored, and aren't doing a lot of good. So we're very much in favour of having buses run as late as possible, especially on the weekends.
I think the advantage that we have through this plan and this coordination is that we're able to have these discussions around the table, and if anything, we need to be able to talk to the regional council about that, but also look at put together the puzzle with what's happening with Victoria University and the shuttle services that they're having as well, and see how we can get a win-win in that space.
Sure. So one more. I've got two more, but I'll go on the list. You asked for sort of some feedback, and so I go right back to the beginning of your comment, which is not that the city statistics show that it's unsafe, but there's quite a perception that it's unsafe. And I was wondering if you're really going through all that list of things to do and comment on how doing these things will change the perception of the city being unsafe, because a lot of them seem to be focused on actual safety.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that that is going to change people's minds.
To us, I think it's visibility and visibility of safety initiatives of people on the street, wearing high vis or our patrollers. They are known to be initiatives that increase that perception of safety. I think the police beat team have seen that through the feedback that they've had from retail and hospitality, as well as the wider community. And our research shows that the visibility of things like the community patrollers, the proposed urban liaison team and the safety spots are the key kind of interventions that allow people to see that there is a safety mechanism around to be used.
Thanks. Councillor Randall, I'll put you back on the list. I just had a bit of feedback from myself and then a question following on from that. So it strikes me that we understand it's not necessarily a system or a plan that would limit the harm. It's the relationships that you hold in the community. And I was wondering, we've had some lobbying from Luke Smith and other groups surrounding certain events that would really like to see co-design elements, either with students or the African community. What opportunities are there for co-design with community and the plan going forward?
In particular, I think it's Action 1.5 is around supporting community-led safety initiatives, and that's one of the ways that people can engage with the plan. But we do need to do some further engagement between now and the time we bring the plan back to you.
Aye, cool. Right, we'll go to the councillor that hasn't had a chance to ask a question yet, and then back to people for round two. Councillor Abdirahman.
I'm not sure if it's a comment or a question, and you can, just respond it accordingly. So we have a bit of an issue example around Newtown, and the focus is currently in the city. And is there any plan in the future how you can expand? And I'm sure Murray knows very well as well. And when things happen also, you can use some policies to remove the car on footpaths that you said, properties or whatever. And recently there was a person that the community knows very well be removed in a place of community places, and actually for the good of that person. But I think that needs to be communicated to the community, and the community doesn't know where that person is going, and it creates a bit of information gap.
Yeah.
And how do you do that and working with the police when that happens? And the first one is expanding to suburbs. The second part is when such a thing happens, how do you follow, how do you communicate with the community and giving them a confidence that individual is getting a proper follow-up and they're getting the support, and the community can be confidently know what is happening, and especially when the community come from a background of less trust in institutions.
This plan has a real focus on the central city, which is what was asked of us. But there are challenges in some of our suburban centres, Newtown in particular. And as we've been more active in the CBD, some of the people that we've seen in town have moved to Newtown into other areas, and we know that we need to respond to that. We really think that Newtown and suburban centres would benefit from a different approach and a really strong community-led, council-supported response rather than a council-led. How we do that needs more thought and needs some work put into it. But we are doing some work on Newtown now, as well as how we kind of apply that approach to other areas that might be experiencing similar problems.
I also think it's important to signal that with the partnership that we have, that feedback and that follow-up, and as we signal with a communications approach, we should be able to have that feedback in a clearer way. So when something's happened or we've had an intervention take place or an activity put through, that with our partners we'll be able to communicate with the community in a better way.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, and who is the right person then for the community to ask? Is that a police? And I'm specifically talking about an individual that been taken from
the recent one. Yeah.
The recent one. How that can be communicated back to the community.
We could take that offline if you want, and I could put you with the right people. Yep.
Kia ora. Round 2 of partai and feedback, starting with Councillor Pennant.
For people who are living on the street, is there going to be 24/7 support under any of these initiatives? Because I always find it distressing when you see someone who needs help at like 8 o'clock at night and, the services don't open till 9 in the next morning.
So Pillar 2, there's an action there around how we can expand the support services beyond the normal business hours, and that's working with Wellington City Mission, DCM, and Te Herenga Kura.
So that would obviously need new funding.
It would be within the provision of what you granted in the LTP of the 500,000.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. Look, my bigger question, and it sort of links in who's on the group, is whether we've identified the causes of some of our problems properly. So, for example, that homophobia still exists in our community. We're really made some really great progress, but it's still there. And unfortunately, some of the people who are sitting on this group have historical problems. And so how are we going to really identify that as being a problem? Because that will lead you to the correct solutions. I mean, this stuff is good, but I just don't think it really gets to the heart of why some people feel they can attack other people, basically.
I'm trying to understand the question.
You've asked a big question.
It is it's a very big question.
It doesn't have a simple answer. And one of the initial slides was around what can and what can't the council control, and some of the root causes of systemic issues like homophobia and racism are things that the council can't directly control. We're focused on this plan, this first kind of iteration of the plan, on actions that we can deliver and that will have a meaningful impact on the problem that we're attempting to resolve. But you're right, those are big generational systemic challenges, and this plan on its own isn't the solution to those.
A supplementary though, the churches and the police, for example, can do some internal work, so it would be useful to hear at a future point about what is being done to meet those challenges. I get we can't do everything, but there are some things where people are interacting who could do some. Thank you.
Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you. Just made it. So one of the things I'm particularly interested in is the support for community safety initiatives. But I've also come across situations where the council doesn't support them because of what they want to do versus what the council thinks they should do. For example, if the council seems to have a reluctance to put in security cameras at the community's request. So I was wondering if you could comment on that.
Are you referring to the petition from the Cocaine Road in Kandala? Is that what you meant when you said we were reluctant to put in
something
cameras?
Totally different, actually, from Peperangi. But
okay, because I don't think we're certainly not reluctant to use city safety cameras, but we talked about when that petition was tabled, the process that we go through to determine the data that we look at and the consultation we do with the police before making any decisions.
Yes, I understand that, and I read that report, and I can see the logic of that. It's more that both in Tara and in Paparangi, the residents have asked for support to get security cameras, and the councils both times have said no. and one was more to do with funding. The other was to do with the fact council wished other measures to be taken because there was a reluctance to put security cameras into public areas due to privacy concerns. And so I'm just wanting to get some comment about where, have we got the balance right about this sort of solution.
So this is our plan is focused on the CBD. So the main, this main city safety area that we're focusing on, Courtney Place and Manners, and some of Lambton Quay. Our CCTV, that 1.1 in Pillar 1, our CCTV modernisation program of work is looking at how we can make sure that our network is fit for purpose in the future. Currently, we have some gaps, and we need to strengthen them up so that we can make sure that our cameras don't go down at any given time, we have the right storage capability, and that we can operate not only outside in this main street and CBD area, but then that will inform the solutions that we provide in the future. And I think that if there's any reluctance from my perspective anyway, it's to make sure that everything's in line with that piece of work. I'm not familiar with the
Okay, if it's out of scope, I understand you're not being briefed, so that's fine. Thank you for your response.
I think kind of the simplistic response to the question of whether the council would support a community request or a community leader response is that we would listen and we would consider the ideas that anybody has, and we would do our best to facilitate them as much as we can within the resources that are available to us and against the other priorities of the city.
I just had a question. I'm aware within our Takai Here agreement and at the beginning of the try, the iwi Leaders Forum set their priorities. And I'm pretty sure it was in the top 3, was working towards ending homelessness and specifically targeting our Māori communities in Wellington to uplift them into this. What kind of kaupapa Māori lens have we got there, or are we able to work with the Iwi Leaders Forum to have some collective leadership in making sure this plan responds well?
Absolutely. In the first instance, I think we mentioned it briefly before, but in terms of that integration of the way that we bring this program together, we are looking at we are inviting our Takahere partners to the right levels of the table, and whether that's in the MES advisory group or through the steering group to help shape the direction of the program from that lens. Another success of the Pōneke Promise that I failed to mention before is also the work that we did to co-design some of these initiatives with our mana whenua in Te Aro Park, and essentially establish a really great way of designing how we work together for anything to do with city safety. So we will definitely be bringing that theme of work into everything that we do in that space. Te Herenga Kura are also an organisation that we will be we're hoping to work really closely with and looking at the way that we roll out some of these initiatives.
Cool, kia ora. Councillor Randall. Deputy Mayor Foon, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, kia ora. Thank you all for the mahi. Just on 3.2, responding to when there are events on, I think I've got the right one, and visibility around that. What kind of systems will need to be triggered? I mean, I'm getting a bit operational, but just what is the thinking about how we will trigger systems to actually achieve that when there's a lot of, it's not formulaic, it's a random reactive action rather than a systemic regular action.
So 3.2 being the event response team? Yeah. So, sorry, the question is how do we respond to events?
Just how... what kind of systems will we need to put in place to be able to respond to that?
Yeah, we already have those systems in place, which is really great, especially when we think around the way that the city's the CCTV camera network works. So lifting the cameras up around those certain events or things that are happening out in the street, making sure that our teams on the ground are going there reactively, and also my intention is obviously proactively to prevent things from happening, and being very, very closely coordinated with obviously the police, but also our outreach services when it's appropriate.
Okay, thank you. One more partai, please, Chair. Just also understanding our street community, like just visiting Whakamaru and DCM really help to, just see our street community through a different lens, and I think there's a big opportunity for that as well. And a big understanding for me was the migration, even just understanding that communities move around, and then how in this plan will we also help the community to our Wellingtonians to better understand our street community and be more connected with them?
I wonder, not to put you on the spot, Murray or Stephen, or both of you, if you have any thoughts on that question.
Yeah, happy to comment. And firstly, my apologies for lateness. We were passing our old building in Newtown on to Dwell Housing Trust, who have got designs to build 26 brand new houses on that site, which is fabulous. Because housing's at the root of an awful lot of these conversations, and if we don't have people well housed, then we shouldn't have an expectation about wellness in the community. It's about the good news and the bad news. I mean, there is some bad news. I think people are struggling more than we've ever seen them struggle before. It's pretty tough out there for people, and we're seeing the consequences of that. We're seeing increased anxiety and mental health challenges. We're seeing increased issues in addiction. Now, none of these are new to you. The question is, how do we respond? And for us, obviously, the most recent thing has been the opening of Whakamaru. That's a conscious decision by the City Mission to move further north in the city. Newtown was too far south, and to move closer to the CBD. But the underpinning principle of Whakamaru is to build a community where there's no us and them. And the idea is that we invite people into the building who have something they need and people who have something to offer. And it is everything and more than we hoped it would be in the first 4 weeks it's been open. So we've had the public part of the building open for 2 weeks. In the first 5 days, we had 1,000 people through the door. And it's about 50-50, and it's hard to make this distinction, but between the manuhiri who we traditionally would serve and the general public. Because if we continue to battle as community agencies to fix this problem ourselves, we won't get there. If we can find a way to make the community that struggle more acceptable and known to the community that have something to offer, then we create a different way of being. And we've seen the most remarkable things happen, I think. For me, the other good news is that the colleague agencies I have sitting here, both in council and police and DCM, are the people that we work with and we trust. And every day our teams will be having conversations. And so we've got a connectedness that I don't think I've experienced before. And so it bodes well for doing things a little bit differently in our city. The other thing that the City Mission has done has come to a strategic realisation, I guess you'd call it, that given the tenure that the organisation's been here for, this is our 120th year, the capabilities and resources we have, we need to be operating at a tougher level in terms of the clients we serve. And we have some really, really difficult people that we're having to work with, as does Stephen and others. But in doing so, and there was a comment made about the churches, what we do is we free some space in the social services space for churches and other community groups to work with some of the lower needs people that traditionally we might have been engaged with. So we share the load, as it were, more than we otherwise would do. So I think you can be really encouraged about the agencies that are sitting around the tables and the people that are working hard to resolve the issues that are here. We're getting more and more accommodation in the city. We're working closer with KO than we have before. And putting people into houses alone isn't going to fix things. Putting people into housing with appropriate support structures will. That's what Stephen does in Housing First, and that's what the rest of us are endeavouring to do. So I think you can be really optimistic about what's happening, but let's not undermine the size of the challenges as well.
Yeah.
Whakamaru does have a commitment to be open 24/7. And I don't think there's a social services agency in the country apart from the helplines that are open 24/7. What does that look like? In its first iteration, it's a crisis recovery cafe, open 24/7, which just means we're people who struggle with mental health challenges and would typically end up in ED or with the police. And I know it's a challenge for police because they have nowhere else to go. Have got somewhere to go to, someone who can listen to them, someone who can guide them accordingly, and it's a great place to go. So hopefully that's the start of a journey into a better response to the community as they need it.
Thanks, Murray. Did you have anything to add, Stephen?
Oh, kia ora. Just to extend what Murray's been saying, I think it's really important also to celebrate what we have achieved. So, for example, over the last 4 years, we've actually housed over 400 people from homelessness into housing, and 98% of those people still actually have their housing to this date. What's really contributed to that success is the leadership and collaboration that Portineke Promise provided, and what this city plan, safety plan is proposing, and that Murray alluded to, about bringing us all together, working better together. Just really highlight too about breaking down barriers. We had Neighbours Month now in Te Aroha Park, which directly came out of the Portineke Promise. So we're bringing the whole community together around things such as chess competitions, etc., and really bringing what we call whakawhanaungatanga to our community, the identity of everyone, and being part of that community. Our relationship with the Retail Association has increased significantly because of the relationships through the Portineke Promise, where our outreach team are actually connecting and building relationships directly with the businesses from those initiatives. So I just really support the plan and that golden thread of collaboration that it leads us in.
Kia ora, thank you all. We have run out of time, but I just really want to extend the heartfelt thanks from all of us at the table for the work that you do in the sector. Many of you for many decades, your agencies, and to acknowledge the place we were at, because a lot of mahi has been done by Sahai and David, even in the last 6 months. So really appreciate all of you and your time. Thank you.
Thank you.